I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Our City. First of all, the City of Elizabeth and the County of Union still have plenty of vaccines available. Go to ucnjvaccine.org, City of Elizabeth website, or elizabethnj.org social media for any additional information. We're all urging people to continue to get vaccinated or boosted. Follow social distance rules if you're not comfortable in a crowded place. Wear a face mask or covering, and personal responsibility is important. If you have any questions on any information going on here in the City of Elizabeth, just call our Public Information Office at 908-820-4124. And for this week's show, I'm pleased to have our neighboring mayor, someone who's been involved in government and political life for an extremely long time. He's going to tell us about that. The mayor of the great city of Linden, Mayor Derek Armstead. Mayor, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. How you doing there?
Good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, it's you've been around a while, Mayor. So the opening question is usually, hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you come up? School? What's going on?
I'm a native of Linden, New Jersey. My grandfather actually came to Linden in 1926. So we were...
Was that looking for work?
Looking for work.
From the South?
He had come from the South and wound up in Newark. And then he heard there was work in Linden at a place called DuPont. And so he moved over to Linden and he began working at DuPont in 1926.
Wow.
Long time.
Your father then was born in Linden?
My father was born in Linden. I think my grandmother had 12 children. Of the 12 children, 10 of them were born in Linden and 2 of them were born in Newark.
Wow.
Yeah, so
go ahead, keep going.
We have a rich history in town. We have a rich history, and actually one of the first African-American families in town. And because my grandmother and grandfather had those 12 children, they had to marry into a lot of different families. So we're connected to a lot of families in Union County.
So you're responsible for the growth of the African-American community in Linden? Is that what you're telling me?
And Elizabeth, too. So we have we're quite connected in both of the towns, you know.
So did you go to school in Linden, Mayor, and grew up there and came up that way?
Yeah, grew up in Linden, went to school in Linden, and in fact, started out at school number 2 right near the mouth of the, at the time, Exxon refinery, and I finished off at Linden High School. So,
is that school still there?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is, yes.
Yeah, because that's where we really border these cities, Elizabeth, Linden, right near the refinery.
In fact, you cut through the refinery and you're in Elizabeth.
Correct.
You leave, you go in Wood Avenue and come out on Park and you'll be in Elizabeth.
Right.
You know.
So what got you involved in politics? Was there a motivating factor, Mayor?
There honestly was a motivating factor. My grandmother and grandfather had been Democratic committee people for quite some time. And in the 80s, I had moved in with my grandmother and grandfather to, of course, they had property on Wood Avenue, and I opened up a small business there. And at that time, I got a chance to watch them operate. And they, as were democratically elected committee people, and they kind of like abandoned the Democratic organization and threw their support behind a young kid by the name of Joe Saliga. And Joe Saliga won his first election to city council. It was just Joe Saliga, my grandmother and grandfather on a line. And I think that's why when I first learned that you can actually be off the line and run as an individual, independently, and win an election.
Were they off the line, Joe Saliga?
Yeah, they ran off the line.
Oh, they did? They didn't have the support of the
county
organization at that point?
Exactly. And my grandmother and grandfather's thinking was they knew Joe's father, they knew Joe's family, and my grandmother and grandfather said it was a no-brainer. Said, how are we going to not support the child of a person who played with our children when they were growing up?
Now, I didn't know this part of Joe's history. I knew Joe well, but I didn't know that part. Was that a city council election, Mayor?
City council. It was his first city council race. His first run for council.
So would that have been late 70s?
Back
or
1982, I believe.
Early 80s, okay.
Early 80s, yes.
Well, that's the first time I ran for city council was 1982.
Yeah, that was many, many moons ago.
So I didn't know Joe at the time, but I met him later when he moved up to the Assembly and then the Senate. So you got involved similar to the way I did, is in somebody else's campaign, understanding the mechanics, and then eventually taking it on yourself, which you did in your first election personally, was 1990?
First election was 1990. Now, I was working at Prudential at the time, and I was on jury duty. And if you could, so I'm going to date myself. There was a newspaper called the Daily Journal, right here in Elizabeth. And I walked by the newspaper, I guess the machine or the newspaper box where we buy newspapers, and it says, Gregorio pardoned. And I knew that Gregorio was going to come back, and I somehow managed to get on his ticket when he came back on his comeback. Kane had pardoned him, and I managed to get on the ticket, and I ran in 1990. Unfortunately lost, but came right back again and ran.
Who did you run against that year, Mayor?
That year I ran against William Motley. He was Bill Motley. He was
a longtime ward councilman at that time.
He was entrenched, and so he beat me. He was actually off the line, and he beat me. And
you were on the line.
I was on the line
with Mayor Gregorio.
With Gregorio, yes. And so 3 years later, I came back and ran again. This time against Bill Motley again, and won.
So you defeated Bill Motley.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I've been here ever since.
So you were on the council, and then when was your first mayor's?
My first mayor's race came in 2010. I won the primary, but I didn't win the general election. And I just gave it another shot in 2014, and we were successful.
So 2010, who was the?
I ran against, Rich Gabunka was the mayor. And everybody kind of like viewed Gabunka's tenure as mayor as an anti-Gregorio vote. So people kind of assumed that whoever won the Democratic primary was probably going to beat Gabunka. So they had selected their candidate, and one thing led to another, and I found myself in a race with him, running against the Robert Bunk at the time. Who was
Robert Bunk, he was the council president.
Council president, and I challenged him in the primary and actually beat him.
You beat him in the primary.
And went on into November and lost the general by. We won on the machines actually, but we lost by 141 votes because of the absentee ballot campaign that had been launched.
And then in 2014, you came back.
2014, I came back again. This time, I ran again off the line without the support of the organization, and we were successful in 2014.
Who did you run against in 2014?
2014, I ran against Rashana Cosby Hurling, who was a Democratic
councilwoman.
She was a councilwoman, but she was their candidate for mayor at the time.
Okay. And then in 2018?
2018, it was, again, I was, by 2018, I was the incumbent.
Sure.
But I still didn't have the backing of the party, so I had to, I ran off the line again.
You're running this year.
This year I'm running, but this year I have the backing of the party, thank God. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get any more gray hair, so.
Well, you could be like me and not have any.
Well, that's true.
So you've been involved in politics a long time, going back to the, did you serve on the Democratic Committee in the 80s or anything, and you were working your way up?
No, I
grandparents?
Didn't do any of that stuff. I just kind of watched my grandparents operate, and I really enjoyed watching them because the Democratic Committee was a lot different back then. I mean, they were the eyes and the ears of the councilmen, and they really were very vigilant in bringing back information. If a sidewalk was broke, if somebody needed some help, they would bring it right to the councilman, and the councilman would in turn act on it. And so it was different. I mean, the processes should still be the same, but it just isn't like it used to be.
That's a good point, yeah. Same thing in our city. I mean, the committee people are more involved in the political function of electing a chairman, as opposed to getting out and finding out what's going on. In our city, it's usually the ward councilmen who are bringing these concerns.
Right. Well, again, the committee people, again, they are responsible for electing the chairman for the city and for the county chairman, which in fact I am the Democratic chairman of town also.
The Democratic chair in Linden.
In Linden, yes.
So before politics, you mentioned you worked for Prudential, is that what you said?
I worked for Prudential for 13 years. Great company, incidentally. I mean, it was
My mother worked for Prudential in the 40s.
I left.
They were in Newark. Are they still in Newark?
Yeah, they're still in Newark. I worked in Newark and I worked in Roseland. A great company to work for. In fact, I left Prudential and took a job at the county.
Oh.
And I really second-guessed my career decision for a very long time as I saw my friends who were working in IT, as I saw their salaries escalating, and me in government, because government, your salary kind of flatlines in government, and so the fact that we had, I had a job working for the county and a city council job, I was able to kind of justify my existence in leaving Prudential.
So Elizabeth and Linden, are going to be together on the Arrive Together initiative that we've worked on with the Attorney General and the Prosecutor's Office. Tell us from your perspective what you're hoping this happens.
Well,
comes out of it.
It's no secret that mental illness has become a serious issue in all these towns, Linden, Elizabeth, Rolway, everywhere, throughout the country. So I think that it's a useful tool. And of course, we partner with Trinitas, and I think the state troopers, the state police were the first ones to use this, and it came to Linden and Elizabeth, and I think it's going to be a great program. When you send a police car out there, everybody's not very willing, not too willing to deal with police, and they'd rather see a civilian. And I think that, particularly if a person has a mental illness, you need to bring a person who has experience in dealing with mental illness to the scene. I'm sure that the outcomes could be a lot better, a lot different.
I'm glad the Attorney General and the Prosecutor's Office picked us to do this.
Me too. And you think about it, our towns are right next to each other. We have Trinitas, a major hospital here, and I'd say to the north and to the south of Linden, we have a hospital in Rolway. So, if a situation did arise, I mean, we have two places to actually go. But we're thankful that Trinitas is the one who's partnering with us on this.
And as you know, Mayor, when you mentioned earlier about what police officers have to deal with, and the only thing certain is the uncertainty. Throw mental illness in there with a complaint and the police arrive and not knowing the full situation and guns are involved, it becomes difficult, and mental professionals could probably help that situation.
Absolutely. I don't know who came up with the idea, but it's a great idea, and I'm glad that we're able to utilize the funding, the source, wherever it's coming from. I'm glad we're able to participate in the program.
Yeah, we just announced it 2 weeks ago, so now we'll get it implemented with the support of the state and the county and go from there. Community connectivity is something you use in Linden, and your stance on the importance of community connectivity.
Well, you don't win elections off the line unless you're connected to the people, okay? And I tell everybody, and my life as a political figure, I have never been afraid to walk up to somebody and just have a conversation and just talk to them, because that's when you learn about people. You open up your mouth and talk to people, and you'll find out all kinds of things. So I think that being connected to the community is very important. I mean, whether it's Pop Warner football, or basketball programs, food banks, we have to be connected. Because if you're not, you don't know exactly what people's problems are.
I mean, in the last 2 years, it's been difficult being a mayor doing connectivity issues.
Absolutely.
We've done social media, I know you have. What was probably your most frustrating and your best moment in the last 2 years when you couldn't meet people on a regular basis?
Well, the advent of Zoom and being able to video conference has certainly helped. But it has been frustrating. I have a saying in Linden, when I first got elected, we would just get up and I'd take one of my guys in the office and say, hey, let's just go and walk down Wood Avenue. And we had a saying, there aren't any votes up in this office. Let's go out and talk to the people. And we would go out and walk and talk to people. But when COVID-19 hit, it was a game changer, all of a sudden, we couldn't go out and shake hands and kiss babies anymore. We were confined to our office. You're wearing masks, and it was just a very tough time,
And Zoom helped, but
Zoom helped.
There's still a little disconnect, right?
Right. There's nothing like talking to a person one-on-one. In fact, I'm here with you today because it was offered I could be on Zoom or video conferencing, and I decided, hey, no, it's better to go right in person.
So, Mayor, Superfund sites, switching gears a little bit. We have one in Elizabeth. You also have one in Linden. Talk to us about your efforts on that Superfund site.
Well, it's called the Linden Chlorine Plant, the LCP site. It's a 26-acre site that has been contaminated, I'm going to say, and abandoned for the last 50 years or so. And we've been working very hard with the DEP, and finally, we've got some progress on it. They're taking down all the buildings that are there, and they're going to cap it. and they're going to make it into a viable piece of property again. Now, this particular property is excellent because there's a rail spur that goes into it. There's an area where you can actually bring in ships and vessels. So it's a very nice piece of property, and if developed correctly, can be a tremendous asset to the city.
How many acres?
26 acres.
And is it in the Tremley Point area?
It's in the Tremley Point area.
Okay, so that's where you talk about the water. So that's on the opposite side of Exxon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. Well, if you go further down, actually, it's on the same side of Exxon, but it's on the rear side of Exxon.
On the rear side, okay.
Yeah.
And well, good luck with that. I know what it's like to develop a large site, the 166-acre site that we did the mall on 20 years ago.
We have our Linden Logistics is another site. We have a 4.5 million square feet of warehousing that's being constructed. We're halfway completed with the project, and those areas are rented out already, are currently being rented. So that's another site. That was our former GAF DuPont properties.
Is that where your grandfather worked?
That's where he worked.
Oh, wow.
That's where he worked.
So, and you've done a good job on the old GM site.
Yes.
And the part of the airport's been developed.
Legacy Square, we call the old General Motors, we call it Legacy Square. And what we've done there, essentially, we built a Walmart, and the idea was to try to put a food court on the highway. If you ever go shopping, you go to the mall, and you stop and you stop and you get something to eat right in the mall in a food court. So we decided that the best thing for that area was to try to put a food court right there in the mall. So if you'll look, you'll see a number of restaurants and establishments right there along US 1 there, where you can actually stop and get something.
Some are still being built.
Some are still being built.
Yeah, I drove by there the other day, and I saw the front of the site with some new restaurants going up.
We got Starbucks coming. We already have Taco Bell. Wawa's coming. We have Panda Express. We have Freddy's Frozen Custard.
So you got a favorite place to go, Mayor, in Linden?
Well, my favorite place to go in Linden, if you could believe this, is Burger King. No, just kidding. No, we like to go to Amici's in Linden. There's an Italian restaurant called Amici's, and you can go get a good meal. You can hang out. They got the bar area. You can hang out a little bit, a little karaoke if you want. It's a nice.
Oh, they have karaoke. Is that on Fridays?
I think the karaoke is on like Thursday nights there. Okay. So.
I've been there for political events. They use it in the basement, right?
They do have political events as well.
Yeah. So, Mayor, we both dealt with COVID-19 in an executive branch, and we work closely with you and especially the African American churches and Hispanic churches early on in getting people vaccines. I know from my perspective what I went through. Tell me from your perspective what you were going through in the early days of COVID-19.
In the early days of COVID-19, unfortunately, our health director was in the process of retiring. So we found ourselves without a director, and we found our food bank, the city's food bank, the people who ran it were seniors, and they were just deathly afraid of COVID, so they were paring back with their hours. So it kind of forced us into a situation where we just said, okay, listen, we're going to go ahead and open up a food bank. So we took the JTG Center, which is a recreation center, and we just opened up a food bank. We just started collecting food and getting money from wherever we could and started feeding people. And we concentrated on our seniors, and the others we concentrated on were just people who were just having some financial troubles. So we were feeding upwards of 300 families a week, just delivering food.
I know our health officer was over there early on.
Yes.
Mark Colicchio.
Mark Colicchio, yes.
Because your guy left.
Yeah, our gal.
Our gal, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she was. She left, and he was very helpful. He was very helpful, and we were able to kind of figure it all out. Thanks to him, he helped us out tremendously.
So, urban community Linden, urban community Elizabeth, people outside will always find something wrong. What do they find wrong about Linden?
You know, the sad reality is people will hear of a shooting or something, and they'll think that, oh, wow, the town's going a certain way. But what they really don't realize is that more often than not, that when there's a shooting in the town, it's usually an outsider coming in. It's not the local people who are doing the shooting. You have to understand that towns like Linden and Elizabeth and Rollway, there's easy access to the highway. and so people will commit these crimes, and they're on the highway and they're gone. So I think whenever there's some sort of a report of a crime, people say, "Oh my God, what's going on in your town?" And it's really, I mean, when you think about it, the town is relatively safe. And if you look at other towns and some of the things that are going on, you know, Linden's really a nice place to live. If it weren't, the property values wouldn't be going up, and people wouldn't still be purchasing homes here.
I know your property values, as in my city, are clearly increasing. You know, recently we talked about Joe Saliga,
Yes.
and I think last week or 2 weeks ago you had a ceremony honoring former Senator Saliga, who passed away about 17 years ago. And tell us about that ceremony, because I know it was rained out.
It was rained out. So last week we did it. The rain date was last week, and it was a very nice ceremony. The street was named after Joe. Joe he was very instrumental in a lot of the people who are in council. He was involved in their campaigns many, many years ago. And financially, Joe was second to none. I mean, even to this day, some of the practices that Joe put in place, we're utilizing them as far as maintaining a level debt service, making sure that we budget correctly for certain items, which has allowed us to stabilize the taxes in town. So that, along with the fact that we're very fortunate that we have a lot of new readables coming in. Joe always told us, don't spend it as fast as you get it. He says, you know, save a little bit of it, you know. And so we've managed to create a balance there that allows us to, in fact, reduce taxes. We've reduced taxes. This is our 6th year in a row that we've reduced taxes in Linden.
So on that, your family's got to be helpful, right? Tell us about your family. You got to balance. I only have one child. You have a couple. You have 3, right?
No, I have 5 children. 5 children altogether. My oldest is 32, and I had her with the previous. But my wife and I have 4 together. We have a 24-year-old who graduated Rutgers 2 years ago. We have 2 twin boys who are 16, and we have Abigail, who's 15. So I still have 4 children in the household. Of course, I told my 24-year-old she can stay as long as she wants. I'm in no rush to be an empty nester. Stay as long as you want. I tell her.
Daughters are special.
Oh, they're special. They really are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter what. I can't even get mad at my daughter. I don't know. You know.
Never.
You can't even get mad at her.
Can't.
It's just, you know,
You're mad at your sons, but
you can't get mad at the girls. You just can't. You know, they break you down.
So, Mayor, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the show, and I wish you well in your role in Linden. As mayor to mayor, congratulations on the great job, the economic development, and keep it going. How your city benefits, my city benefits as well.
Well, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that because with all the new industries that are coming in town, one of the things that we've managed to do is we said we have a Linden First program, and I made it abundantly clear, just because it says Linden First doesn't mean you have to live in Linden. I said because if a person in Elizabeth is looking for work, or Rawway or Roselle, we say come to our Linden First. We'll do everything humanly possible to help you because, you know, we just don't have enough people to work in Linden at these all the new things that are being developed. So we'll borrow some of your folks if you want.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm sure Mayor Jacoby appreciates it as well.
There's plenty of work for everybody, I say.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
For Mayor Derek Armstead of Linden, I'm Chris Bolwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.